Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Glory to you, Lord. Jesus spoke this parable to his disciples. The kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for the usual daily wage, he sent them into his vineyard. When he went out about 9 o'clock, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and he said to them, "You also go into the vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right." And so they went. Then he went out again at noon and about 3 o'clock and did the same. And about 5 o'clock he went out and found others standing around. And he said to them, "Why are you standing here idle all day?" They said to him, "Because no one has hired us." He said to them, "You also go into the vineyard." When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his manager, "Call the laborers and give them their pay, beginning with the last and then going to the first." When those hired about 5 o'clock came, each of them received the usual daily wage. Now when the first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also received the usual daily wage. And when they received it, they grumbled against the landowners, saying, "These last worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us, who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat." But he replied to one of them, "Friend, I am not doing you any wrong. Did you not agree with me for the usual daily wage? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to the last the same as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or are you envious because I am generous? So the last will be first, and the first will be last." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. I've concluded that when I get to heaven, I'm going to have a conversation with God about his accounting practices. Because he could have saved a lot of money by not paying the last as much as he paid the first. I've always struggled with this reading because my business background says, you don't pay the person who only works 1 hour what you pay the person who worked the entire day. But I was reading a reflection on this. And the reflection was this. By the time the people who started at 6 o'clock in the morning got to 5 o'clock in the evening, what were you getting out of them? So there's a good chance that those that came last worked harder than those who had been working all day. Now, it's an interesting way to look at things, but let's consider it from our own journey of faith. Most of us are cradle Catholics. We were raised in the faith, and we live our faith, and we kind of work at it. But then you get people who come into the faith later in life. RCIA. At Easter time this year, in our diocese, over 1,000 people were received into the church. And those people are like the ones that came at noon. We're still hoping to get some work out of them. But then there are also people that have their conversion on their deathbed. And the most interesting part of that is that when you have that experience, a long time ago, 1998 to be exact, I was with a gentleman who had been told that his brain cancer had progressed to such a state that they gave him less than a month to live. At which point in time, he asked to talk to a chaplain. which shocked his entire family and especially his wife. They themselves had not been married in the church because he didn't believe in it. He didn't believe in a God. And ever since he had been diagnosed with brain cancer, he had less of a reason to believe in God, because what good and gracious God would give you a cancer? So he had a lot of anger. My first encounter with him was not pleasant. It began with something like, what kind of God do you believe in that would allow bad things to happen to good people? My response was less than helpful. Because my response was, what makes you think you're a good person? His wife got up and left the room. I could see her laughing in the hallway. And he laid there, kind of sputtering, and proceeded to try and defend his goodness. And of course, for each good thing that he offered, I offered one reflection that maybe that wasn't so good. He goes, I was always kind to my employees. And I said, who got the bigger bonus, you or your employees? He said, I always let my employees have Christmas off. I said, that's a good thing. Did you pay them for that time off at Christmas? No, he didn't. And for everything he threw out, because I have a business background, I threw it back at him. And finally, he says, so what you're telling me is that I'm a bad person and that's why I have cancer. And I said, no. I'm telling you, you could be a much better person, and your cancer has nothing to do with good or bad. Your cancer is a fact of life. We are all going to die from something someday. None of us lives forever. And good people don't get to live longer than bad people, and bad people don't get to live longer than good people. I have no idea how God works that out. He said, but what I do know is that God is merciful, and God is loving, and God is forgiving. The question is, what do you believe? Well, nobody lives in Canada for close to 70 years and doesn't have an understanding of God. You can't be in this country and not have journeyed through Christmas and not have an understanding of Jesus Christ. You can't live in this country and see churches and not recognize that there is a God out there. So we had other conversations. His wife, of course, kept reminding me about what makes you think you're good. She says, Father, that was the best line I have ever heard in my life. I haven't used it since. But you see, that person in that last month of his life challenged his wife, his children, and a number of people that he had done business with over the years to rethink their own walk with God, their own journey in life. Because he used my line on a whole bunch of them, and namely his children and his business partners. What makes you think you're good? Because a lot of the things that we say make us good are the fleshy things of life. I gave to the poor. That's a good thing. I gave to the destitute. That's a good thing. But do I have a relationship with Jesus, which is a better thing? Do I live my life in accordance with Jesus or something else? When I give to the poor and the destitute, do I do it because it's what Jesus taught us to do? Or am I trying to earn points? Am I trying to look good? And I don't know about the rest of you, but I could probably name off a number of people that I know who regularly have volunteered at soup kitchens, at Feed the Hungry programs, to look good, to be admired by other people. And that doesn't get you any bonus points with God. Do you pray? Do you pray for your family and friends? Do you teach your children how to pray? Those are the good and righteous things we're supposed to do. Do you love your neighbor because Christ tells you to love your neighbor? All of those things are there. And of course, yes, we look at the gospel today, and there are those who have been laboring hard from the beginning. Or maybe not. How many of you, in all honesty, have labored as hard as you should have worked as hard at your faith as you should have? This morning we had a little retreat for the children in sacramental, or for the parents of children in sacramental preparation. And I was really, really tempted to start it off with giving everybody a piece of paper and asking them to write out the 10 Commandments, the 7 corporal works of mercy, right, and the 3 primary teachings of the church. Now, I do those things to entertain myself, but I know better than doing it, because we would start off with humiliation. Because it is amazing the number of Catholics that cannot recite the 10 Commandments. It's amazing the number of Catholics that cannot recite the 7 corporal works of mercy. It's amazing the number of Catholics that don't know the 3 primary teachings of Jesus. But we're still laboring in the vineyard. But are we doing the labor we should be doing? As the first reading tells us, we don't think the way God does, and God definitely doesn't think the way we do, which I don't know about you guys, but I'm very thankful for. Because if God thought the way I think, we'd all be in trouble. You see, my thought patterns come from someone who is sinful, who doesn't have the perfection of the Father, who doesn't have the mercy, the compassion, of the love of the Father. I'm hopeful I'll get there one day, but I'm not putting any money on that one. We're all journeying in the vineyard. But what do we have to show for our work in the vineyard? And the thing is, the one thing I can relate to in that gospel is the fact that over the years of managing staff, one of the things I had to learn was, don't be concerned about how that staff member is working, concern yourself about yourself. Don't worry about how the other staff are working. Worry about yourself. The same is true in our journey of faith. Yes, we should be concerned that everybody gets to heaven. We should also be more concerned about, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? I love pointing this out to parents because, well, My dad, without intending, taught my brother and I how to swear. Right? Wasn't his intention, but he taught it to us. My father also taught my brother and I how to lie. My mother taught us how to perfect it. Dad's saying, don't tell your mother. Don't let your mother find out. And then, of course, my mom, right? I'm sorry, Grandma, but we're just not able to come today. The kids are all sick. Cough, kids. You know, the one best thing about being the priest is you can tell stories on your mom and dad. Wasn't their intention. Wasn't their intention. But little children learn very quickly. And then how do you undo it? How do you undo what you've learned? I can still swear really good in German. But I've worked very hard not to. And there are times when my mother's, what your grandmother doesn't know won't hurt us. And you try and stay away from that too. But the things we learn are very hard to unlearn. How well are we laboring in the field? What kind of model and example are we? And is our model and example the healthy and the good one? Or is our model and example not helping us? At the end of the day, thank God that God is the judge. And we are never the judges. For God is full of mercy, compassion, and love.